Welcome back to Never Did It. I'm Brad Garoon. I'm here with my buddy Jake Ziegler. Never Did It. We go year by year through the last 100 years of movies and assign each other a movie that the other person hasn't seen, and then we talk about both of those movies. And this week, the year that we are discussing is 1973, and the first movie that we're discussing is The Last Detail. Jake, you assigned me The Last Detail. Tell me all about why.
Well, it looks like you've seen a lot of movies from 1973, and I've seen much less. But I was happy to choose The Last Detail because it's got some really great performances in it. It's Jack Nicholson and Randy Quaid and Otis Young. And Randy Quaid is he's just a baby in this movie. I think it's one of his first roles. And early Nicholson, I think there's such a cool energy with early Nicholson performances. I think a lot of later Nicholson performances, there can be a tendency for him sometimes to lean into that almost like self-parody Nicholson, because like everyone's got a Nicholson impression, everyone likes to do the Nicholson voice, whatever. And I think some of his roles later on, for better or worse, were kind of informed by that. So the early Nicholson performances I really love. And this is one I think that gets a little bit forgotten because, gosh, there's just so many great Nicholson performances and great films, from the late 60s and into the 70s. I mean, gosh, you've got, One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest and Chinatown and Easy Rider and Five Easy Pieces and Terms of Endearment. And there's just so many of them. I think The Last Detail kind of gets lost in the shuffle, and it's a lot of different things. It's a road movie. Number one, I love road movies. The whole plot of the movie is like, well, we're just taking this guy from here to there. That's it. It's a really simple movie. It's a road movie. It's kind of a buddy movie. The three guys, basically the premise, Jack Nicholson and Otis Young are in the Navy, and they get a detail. Apparently it's going to be the last one, where they have to take another Navy member, Randy Quaid. They have to take him over to a Navy prison. So it's basically they're, again, going from point A to point B, and it's kind of about their kind of adventures along the way. So kind of a road movie, kind of a buddy movie. I just thought it was really good, really entertaining, great performances. And, it's really, really very 70s, especially in the way we can talk about in a little bit, but especially in the ending, which I really, really love.
Yeah, I thought it was awesome.
Good.
I don't know if I totally agree that Nicholson hadn't fallen into self-parody yet. There are a few scenes here where he really goes off into Nicholson land, but they're great. And it's a great way to juxtapose his attitude about how he feels about the Navy and how he feels about being an American against Otis Young's different attitude, which has a lot to do with the fact that Otis Young is black and Jack Nicholson is white. And they have very different experiences of living in America and being in the Navy and having been in Vietnam. And as with most movies that are at all involved with the military around this time, Vietnam looms over it and how it affected both of them. Not so much Randy Quaid's character, because you get the idea that he's not served overseas because he's very young and he's just a klepto. So,
yeah.
Although you do learn that his home life was probably a disaster in a very cool and kind of disturbing scene when they go to his hometown. Yeah, I really like it for all the same reasons you do. So what I loved probably the most is the way that they incorporate the Nichiren Shoshu movement into it. So this is what I love about new Hollywood movies in general, is they were interested in like what the subcultures of America were. You had Easy Rider going with the hippies and staying in their commune for a little while. And then there's like the Hicks, who eventually, that's how the movie ends. I won't spoil Easy Rider for you. But they did a similar thing here with the Nichiren Shoshu, where they're in New York on their way to the prison, and they hear chanting, and then they go into this little gathering of people, and it's all white people who are interested in this form of Buddhism. I think it's a form of Buddhism. And that becomes like a theme throughout the movie, is Randy Quaid thinking that he can use this chanting to help him become more actualized and maybe escape from Nicholson and Young. And then also just how like Nicholson and Young react to him doing it. They're into it for a while and then they get sick of it. But when they go to the party, that's when you learn more about how does Otis Young feel about his time in the military? Mm-hmm. How can he be pro-military, pro-Nixon in this era? This guy at the party challenges him, say one bad thing about Nixon, but it's interesting because it's a white dude challenging him to say that. It's like, dude, this is really easy for you to say. You didn't live the life. They don't get deep into it, but anyone with a functioning brain knows that that's the subtext of this scene. This privileged guy who has so much free time on his hands that he can start doing this chanting stuff in his free time dares to challenge the life choices and morals of this dude who had to do the military to live, and the military's given him everything he has. And even though he hates this effing detail, he still does it. He still wants to finish the job. He still wants to do it right.
Yep.
Yeah, I thought that was really cool. Carol Kane is great in a very brief role.
Small role, but yeah, she's excellent.
Was she in every movie in the 70s? It feels like she was in every American movie in the 1970s.
She keeps popping up and like, oh yeah, gosh, that's Carol Kane. Yeah.
Yep. It made me think of God of Carnage, because that's also her and Jack Nicholson. Both of them great in that movie too. Highly recommend God of Carnage. A couple little things. There's a scene where they're in a diner and Randy Quaid he hopes that they'll melt the cheese on his burger, because that's so much better when the cheese is melted. And all I could think was, who's not melting cheese on a burger? Was that a thing? And then that becomes the catalyst for Nicholson trying to teach Quaid that he needs to stand up for himself more and to get what he wants. And then I noticed a weird thing, and I have a question for you. You know how in like most movies and TV, when people hang up the phone, they don't say goodbye? It's like a weird.
Yeah. Yep.
Do people not think waiters in movies either?
Oh yeah, that is weird. I think there are people like that in real life.
Well, that sucks.
It does suck, and I don't like it. It's awkward every time. Yeah.
Yeah. So I really enjoyed it. Fast forward a few seconds if you don't want to know how the movie ends. I really thought Nicholson was going to kill Quaid in that scene in the park where Quaid runs away.
Yeah.
Because Nicholson is like at the end of his rope. He's drunk. He's hungover, and he's frustrated with the Navy. And I just thought that was going to happen, but that doesn't happen. They get Quaid to the jail. And then what I love most about this ending is like, they just go back. They're like, all right, I guess back to life as usual. This was just a week in our life. And it was kind of nuts, but we just go right back to what we were doing.
Yeah. And that's the very 1970s type of ending that I was talking about, where it's like, yeah, they get to that ending and they're not better friends. You know, the Nicholson Otis Young character, they're not better friends. They're not going to keep in touch. I don't think they particularly like learned anything, you know, about each other. I mean, maybe they did, you know, but not really. I mean,
probably not.
Like it was just here's a slice of their lives. You learn, you know, about like kind of what got them there and everything. And yeah, the performances are wonderful. And then yeah, it's just kind of that's a really 1970s kind of nihilistic, you know, sort of style that was really coming out, you know, in the 70s with a lot of these, you know, kind of new voice filmmakers, you know, like like Hal Ashby, who directed this film along with Five Easy Pieces, which I might have assigned for you also for 1970, which is another great early Nicholson performance. So yeah, I really, really love that ending, and like the performances are incredible. Nicholson and Randy Quaid were both nominated for Nicholson lead, Quaid supporting. Of course, Otis Young didn't get nominated because he's not white, so the Academy has had that problem for quite some time. I mean, Otis Young is also terrific in this movie. I mean, all three of them. It's really all three of their movies. I mean, the dynamic that they have together is really good in all of their scenes. Screenplay by Robert Towne. Of course, I mean, Robert Towne wrote a great screenplay. That's to the surprise of no one.
What else has he written?
Chinatown is his, you know, was the big one for him. So
just loves naming movies after himself.
Yep, he does. Yep. Oh gosh, yeah. He also did the first Mission Impossible. I forgot that.
I really like what you said about this just being a slice of life and not really being about like a hero's journey, because it's not. And I think that goes hand in hand with what I like about New Hollywood era films, in that the movie is not about the characters. It's not about giving you a character's journey. It is about giving you a look at someone who's not like you, and just letting you see it, which is why I like the Nichiren Shoshin piece in this, because that's something that a lot of people probably who saw this movie probably didn't know about. And a lot of people who didn't know someone in the Navy wouldn't have known about what it's like to be a military person. Now, granted, around this time, there were a lot of more military personnel in people's lives than usual because of drafting. But I just think that part of it's so great. It's not about the characters learning something. It's about you learning about them.
No, so that's what a lot of the great movies of the 70s were like. And yeah, this is definitely one of them. That's I think I saw this for the first time maybe in high school or something. It's always kind of stuck with me, and I've watched it a couple times over the years, and I was really happy to go back and watch it again. Yeah, gosh, it's really good. And I feel like it's been a little overlooked, a little forgotten over the years.
Yeah, I gave it 4 stars. I think it's wonderful. It is in my top 10 of this year, which we'll get to later. And I have seen quite a few movies from 73. I'm really into this era. Now let's talk about a movie that is not about just learning about the characters. It is about violence and sex, pretty much.
Lots of it.
Lone Wolf and Cub, Baby Cart to Hades. It is the third in the Lone Wolf and Cub film series. Now, I signed this to you because every podcaster in the world who talks about The Mandalorian or anything else, any other action thing that involves a kid, is like, oh, it's Lone Wolf and Cub. And I guarantee none of them have seen Lone Wolf and Cub. Until the pandemic, I hadn't seen Lone Wolf and Cub when I had a ton of time on my hands. And I'm like, why don't I just watch 5 movies that all came out within 2 years of each other?
Isn't there 6?
6 movies that came out within 2 years of each other. They do start to blend together after a while. They're pretty similar. But I do think that the third one, is the best one. Lone Wolf and Cub, what is it about? And why did I give it to you? Because everyone talks about Lone Wolf and Cub, this father-son action dynamic. And I thought you should see it. Because it's copied now a lot. So Lone Wolf and Cub was originally a manga series. I'm going to butcher all these names. I apologize in advance. This manga series by Kazuo Koike and Goseki Kojima. It lasted a long time, 6 years, 28 volumes. This is so much that 6 movies does not completely tell you the story. The Lone Wolf and Cub movies are all directed by Kenji Misumi. He not only created Lone Wolf and Cub, he also created the Zatoichi series, which had 26 films in that series. I've seen none of those.
I've seen one of those, actually.
Is it any good?
Yeah, it was cool. I saw it at a film festival in Saugatuck, Michigan, the Waterfront Film Festival one summer. Yeah, it was pretty cool.
You know what? If I ever get through all the David Fincher movies and all the Hitchcock movies, I'll watch all the Zatoichi movies too.
There you go.
So the same guy responsible for both. This came out around the same time. Actually, this movie came out in the same year in the United States, at least, and it came out in Japan just the year before as Lady Snowblood, which these two film series, well, Lady Snowblood and Lone Wolf and Cub were very. If you like Kill Bill, you can thank these movies. They exist because these movies exist.
Yep.
And they star, okay, so I'm really going to screw up this name, Tomisaburo Wakayama and Akihiro Tomikawa as his son. But I'm pretty sure this film series is the only movies that his son, that the boy who played Daigoro was in. And at the beginning of the first movie, I told Jake he should watch the third movie. He said, "Oh, so I have to start with this first movie." I'm like, "You really don't. You really can just watch the first 10 minutes of the first one, where Ogami Ito, the main character, is betrayed. He's the executioner for the shogunate. And he's betrayed by them because the Yagyu clan is taking over and his wife is murdered. And then he and his son spend the rest of the film series basically regrouping and then getting bloody revenge on the evil Yagyu clan and whoever else gets in his way."
Yep.
And it's gnarly violent and it's so much fun. And it's like the violence is creative. All of the movie titles, or almost all the movie titles, reference the baby cart that his son is in. And that baby cart is used as a weapon in a lot of different interesting ways. I thought it was super dope. The third one I think is the best. It just, for me, it moves the most quickly. It has the most interesting opening scene. After I saw the first two, the first one I liked, the second one I loved, the third one I was like, holy crap, this movie series is wild. And so I just thought you need to see it. And I'm really happy because you watched all 3 of the first 3. So tell me what you thought of them.
And that might be good advice for some other people who maybe just want to dip their toes into, like, hey, you only need to watch, like a little bit of the first 2 to watch the third. But for me, I'm super OCD and I'm super into film stuff. And it sounded like movies I would like too. So it wasn't like I didn't feel like it was a chore or anything to watch the first 2 in order to watch the first 3. And I basically felt the same way that you did about it. I'm like, all right, I liked the first one a lot. I thought it was pretty cool. The violence is, really creative and it's almost, it's a little bit cartoony and how like the blood is just squirting and flying, and it's almost like a fluorescent red. Like it's just, it's ridiculous. And then the second one is like, this is even a little bit cooler. It's a little, the violence is even a little cooler, and the story's flowing a little better than the third one. Yeah, I thought was the best of the 3. I haven't seen the latter 3 of the series yet, but the third one, yeah, I thought the story was the most interesting, and the violence again was, they really just kind of, everything just kind of hit perfectly in that one. And the third one's been my favorite of the series so far. And the kid gets a little more involved in the third one too, which is just really neat. Some of the creative things that they have for him to do to help his dad. If
you've seen The Mandalorian, specifically like the first few episodes of The Mandalorian, they're pulling heavily from this series of movies where the kid's not an action star. I don't want to say a toddler. He's like 4 or 5 years old. He's really small.
Yeah.
But as it goes on, he gets more involved, just like Grogu gets more involved as The Mandalorian goes on. Of course, if you're not brain dead. This kid, Daigoro, he never becomes like an equal fighter to his father. He's a small child. Whereas Grogu is a Jedi mind-reading wizard. But the thing that's most tragic is not that Daigoro never grows up to become as equal to his father, because the movies end before that could happen, is that the movies end before there's a real conclusion to the story. So the best thing to do, and what I tried to do, although it's quite difficult, is to watch all 6 movies because they're all a blast to differing degrees. And then you have to find the last manga, 178 pages, the final fight scene between the leader of the Yagyu clan and Ogami. 178 pages. That's an interesting way to have to finish a franchise, is to watch 6 movies and then read a 178-page comic book. That you can only hope has been translated into English.
Yeah.
Did you catch that, like, Kill Bill Volume 1 is this movie?
Oh, yeah. I mean, definitely. I mean, you can see the Tarantino, you can see, I mean, just in the way the blood, when Lucy Liu gets her head cut off in Kill Bill, I mean, it's the same kind of blood splatter type of thing. And I haven't seen the Lady Snowblood films, but I understand that's kind of a similar, which you have seen, I believe.
I saw the first one. I did not think it's the same vibe. but I found it a little slower. So I didn't keep watching them. But I saw the first one. Now I want to go watch the Zatoichi movies, all 26 of them.
Yeah. Good luck.
Keep in mind when you're watching these are very much in the vein of like American exploitation films. They're short. They're real violent. There's rape in them. They're meant to really heighten the violence and like chaos of this time period in Japanese history. They're not historical. They're like violent fantasies, anti-authoritarian violent fantasies. So keep that in mind. And if you're not into that, don't bother with these.
Yeah.
If you are into that, these are so fun.
Agree. Yeah. They're very cool for what they are. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Do you want to talk about our top movies of 73?
I would love to talk about our top movies of 73. I've only seen 10 according to my letterbox, so I'm able to make a top 10. Do you want me to get it started?
You get it started. I have more than 10, much more than 10, but I think I've drawn a pretty good line between the movies I really think people should watch from 73 and movies that you can skip.
My number 10 is the Woody Allen film Sleeper, which quite frankly I don't have a rating for on Letterboxd, and I quite honestly don't remember having seen, but it's of the 10 I've seen, that's the, I've only seen 10, so that's my number 10.
Okay, that's a weak recommendation. I will supplement that because I have a tie for number 10. Two genre films. I have the French animated, it's like a cutout animation film, Fantastic Planet. It's very, very weird. It all takes place on an alien planet. There's giants and mini people, and it's all very, very, very French, but it's very cool. And also the original Wicker Man, which is just a really, really cool horror movie. We talked about on our Halloween episode how, it didn't really feel like gore showed up in movies until the Texas Chainsaw Massacre. And you get that here. This is much more of like a psychological horror movie than it is a gory horror movie, but it's basically about a virgin who gets in over his head, an adult virgin who gets in over his head on a weird island. Very good movie.
Number 9 for me is the Disney animated film Robin Hood, which I just love. Saw a lot as a kid. I still think it's terrific.
It's my number 6.
Nice. Okay, good. What's your number 9?
Number 9 for me is Last of Sheila. It's a murder mystery movie in the vein of an Agatha Christie movie, though it's not an Agatha Christie movie. It's a lot like Death on the Nile in that people are on vacation on a boat and then stuff goes down and murder. It's really fun. And Ian McShane is in it, which is awesome.
Oh, dope.
What's your number 8?
Number 8 is the first Roger Moore James Bond film, Live and Let Die, which I think there are some problems with, but holds up reasonably well as an entertaining action movie and is one of the better Roger Moore entries.
Yeah, I don't like it. I have seen that movie and I don't care for it. Number 8 for me is Magnum Force, the sequel to Dirty Harry. I like it more. It's got Hale Holbrook. He's great in it, and I just think it's a better movie than Dirty Harry, and I love it a lot.
Then for me is the one we just talked about, Baby Cart to Hades.
That's really interesting because number 7 for me is The Last Detail.
Oh, nice. Okay. Number 6 for me is The Last Detail.
Number 6 for me is Robin Hood, which I always have to shout out. We talked about this in the episode where I did my Disney rundown, but Peter Ustinov as Little John is the greatest thing in any Disney movie ever.
Yeah, it's a classic. Speaking of classics, we're moving into some really upper echelon territory here with some of the with my top 5 of this year. Number 5 is The Exorcist, R.I.P. William Friedkin.
So I've seen it, but a long, long time ago, and I don't have it rated on Letterboxd because I am afraid to watch it again. I'm not embarrassed.
Pretty terrifying, yeah. I don't think my wife will watch it either.
Number 5 for me is Lone Wolf and Cub, Baby Cart in the Land of Demons.
Is that the 4th one?
It's the 5th one.
5th one, okay.
Yeah, they pumped out a lot of these. Multiples of these movies came out per year. It's so funny that they made 6 in like 2.5 years and then never made another one.
Yeah.
He died pretty young, the director. I don't know if that was part of the reason, or maybe they just lost funding or interest. What's number 4 for you?
Number 4 is the George Lucas film American Graffiti.
So that's my number 3.
Oh, I love that movie. It's so good.
Yeah, it's terrific. Early Harrison Ford. You've got Richard Dreyfuss at his most charming. You've got
Ron Howard himself.
Ron Howard as a goof.
Yep.
Yeah. What'd you say? As himself?
Yeah, Ron Howard is himself. Yep.
He's just doing his own thing. It's great film. Number 4 for me is The Sting.
Oh, great. Yeah. Great movie.
Redford and Newman just killing it.
Yep.
And Robert Shaw.
Yeah. Oh yeah. Number 3 then for me is Mean Streets, with De Niro and Keitel, the early Scorsese. Yep.
Yeah. I don't like that movie either.
Yeah. I remember that about you. Yep.
Yeah. Don't care for Mean Streets. For me, number 3, I said American Graffiti.
Yep. And my number 2 then is The Sting with Redford and Paul Newman.
Robert Shaw. Let's not forget Robert Shaw.
And Marvin Hamlish does the score. I know that because of Role Models.
That's so funny.
Yeah.
Number 2 for me is Lone Wolf and Cub, Baby Cart to Hades.
Nice. And my number 1 is, we've mentioned him sometime within the last couple of weeks, but the first Terrence Malick film, Badlands.
That was like number 12 or 13 for me. I like Badlands, but it's a little bit lower down. My number 1 is, and a movie I cannot believe you haven't seen, and had I not given you Lone Wolf and Cub, I would have given you this movie, Bogdanovich's Paper Moon.
Oh, yeah, that's one of my blind spots. No, I can't. Yeah, kind of hard to believe I haven't seen that.
I'm just giving you this homework. You need to see it. It is one of the sweetest, funniest, great. I mean, like, you like Barry Lyndon, right?
Love Barry Lyndon, yeah.
It's so good.
Mm-hmm.
It's nothing like Barry Lyndon except that it has the same star, but it's a wonderful. And you've never seen The Last Picture Show, right? I think I have.
I haven't done that either. Yeah.
So So when we watch Last Picture Show, you should, for this podcast, you also need to watch Paper Moon.
Yeah, I'll just group those together.
Great. All right. That's it for 1973. What a fun episode this was. Please watch tons of Japanese exploitation films, and thank you for hanging out with us.
We recorded most of this episode a few weeks ago, but we forgot to talk about a couple of important things. Maybe they're not that important, but we wanted to talk about them. We were texting and we were like, we should talk about these. So, Jake, there is a non-sequel to this movie. It's not a sequel to The Last Detail, but the book that it's based on is the sequel to Last Flag Flying. Or sorry, to The Last Detail, and that movie is Last Flag Flying. And you've seen the movie Last Flag Flying.
Yes.
Can you talk a little bit about it? Does it feel, I know it's been a while since you've seen it, but does it feel like a sequel to this movie?
I don't remember feeling like, that it was in the same vein at all. It felt, I mean, the characters were older. I mean, it was definitely a lot more reflective of their time in their time when they were in the Navy. Maybe if I had noticed at the time that it was, that it was a, spiritual successor or even like a literal, successor, I would have noticed that. But it's definitely, the characters are much older and they're looking back on their time more so than, whereas The Last Detail is, they're like literally right in the middle of their time. So no, I definitely didn't feel like that. I mean, if you didn't know that they were related, you could probably watch the two movies close together and really not notice that they were related, at least as far as I can remember.
All right, well, I'm glad we got that out of the way. The other thing I wanted to talk about is 2 days ago, we asked the question, and we were both we're not like horror experts in any way, so maybe you shouldn't even be listening to us talk about horror movies, but hopefully you already listened to Tuesday's episode on Psycho and Village of the Damned. But I asked you if you thought that Texas Chainsaw Massacre was the first like gory horror movie, and you didn't know, and I didn't know. It turns out, no. It's 11 years too late to be the first gory horror movie. The first official like splatter film, as they were called, was a movie called Blood Feast that came out in 1963, directed by a fella named Herschel Gordon Lewis, who is now given credit for inventing that genre, like nasty, ugly horror movies. And I watched the trailer for it. It's pretty gross. It's tame by today's standards because the blood is like neon and it looks, it doesn't look realistic. But it's very blood. There's like a ton of blood. In an American movie, it was pretty shocking. And the trailer's funny because it starts with a person in front of a red background, which may have been the thing that influenced how red band trailers would look, giving a warning like, if you have children, leave the theater now. So I recommend everyone go home, get on your internet, check out the red band trailer for the red background trailer for Blood Feast. It's interesting. And maybe I'll watch it someday. I bet it's not very good.
If you want to know what is coming out next week, go to our Letterboxd profile. You can find me at Brad Garoon on Letterboxd. I think Jake, you're Jake Ziegler on Letterboxd.
Yep, it's Jake_Ziegler.
And both of us have pinned to our profiles our Never Did It podcast list. You could also just search for the Never Did It podcast list. And the two movies that will be discussed on next week's episode are always at the top of that list. So check that out. And thank you for joining us for Never Did It.